My name is Sibel Taka. I am 9 years old. I go to school at Kwajenga Primary. I am 9 years old. I am in grade 3. I am the grade 3 governor. I like reading storybooks and drawing. When I grow up, I want to become a doctor. In 2020 to early 2023, there was drought in Kenya. In our community, there was a lot of dust and very little water. Food became very expensive. My family sometimes lacked food. Many of my friends also lacked food. My friends were sometimes absent from school. Many children suffer when such things happen. You want to learn in school, but when you are hungry, you can't pay attention in class. When it is too hot, you can't pay attention in class. Many of us depend on the food at school. We carry the food home so that we are not hungry. Still in school, you never learn why it's getting more dry and hot. We never learn how to prepare ourselves. This changed when Teacher Esther joined our class last year. She started talking to us about climate change. We watched videos, read stories, and drew pictures. We learned that some problems are connected to climate change and we can do something about it. This is why we decided to grow our own food. We planted onions, sukuma wiki, spinach, carrots, and many others. We planted these vegetables in recycled containers and in gardens. We also take care of our greenhouse at school. Our class has eaten onions and sukuma wiki from our project. Some of my friends have also planted onions and vegetables at their home. They will provide shade and fresh air. We have water tanks at our school that help us to conserve water for dry spells. Climate education makes learning fun and interesting for us. We don't want to miss school. Now we want to get solar panels for our class so that we can have lights in class. Even though climate change seems big, we are doing something about it, and we are taking charge and shaping our today and our future. When you go home, please help children like me to do also something about climate change. Thank you.
Similar to what we've heard in the powerful story of Sibel, the impact of climate change are severely affecting the health, the nutrition, livelihoods, and education of children and communities across the world. This is fundamentally shaping children's lives, and it is critical that we begin to equip them with the knowledge and skills to mitigate and adapt to the impact of climate change and also build resilience. It also challenges us all to evolve the purpose and systems of education. The way we are teaching needs to change, and in ways that are relevant and meaningful to student lives and also prepare them for the future that we want for them. Climate education has to be a central part to this, right? It also challenges us to evolve the purpose and systems of our education. Unfortunately, even though climate education is largely absent from schools around the world, there are several examples and initiatives from network partners in Africa that offer outstanding insights and illustrations about the action that we all need across the globe to advance climate education. So, in this choice session, we invite you to learn from inspiring African climate education champions, ranging from fellows, teacher trainers, youth leaders, and partner staff who exemplify how, in the face of climate crisis, we all can truly live into our purpose of supporting all children like Sibel to shape a better future. The approaches to climate education have some vital distinguishing factors that make them impactful. For example, firstly, they're entrepreneurial, often creating programs or initiatives when none existed before, like planting food crops in school. Secondly, they are student-led, often directly led by students like Sibel, with the support of educators like Esther, and focused on building the agency of students to address climate impact. And lastly, they are locally rooted and solutions-oriented. and these are based on a diagnosis of the particular issues in their own communities, which leads to contextually relevant solutions. For the second part of this session, we will all build on these approaches and insights, and together, in a roundtable discussion, we are going to identify concrete pathways for advancing climate education in each of our own contexts. And I really believe that the power of collective action and contextually relevant climate education is very important for moving forward. Ultimately, we hope that you will be able to gain a deep understanding of the urgent need for climate education and why it is currently absent in most schools and classrooms, as well as powerful approaches for addressing climate education. So we're not just going to be talking about the problems, but we're also going to be discussing the solutions. Secondly, we're going to realize the power of climate education for advancing our network core purpose and understand ways in which we can all truly integrate into our organization's climate education. We will also set a concrete intention for advancing climate education locally in your own context, and also understand where to look forward to for support, guidance for realizing our intention.
I'm sure we are all here because in one way or the other, we have experienced climate change. And beyond that, we are also here because we believe in the fierce urgency of doing something now about it. And so what we'll be talking about here is not new. I will start by just talking briefly about the impacts of climate change. In my country, it results in seasonal flooding, which prevents children from going to school, especially children who have to walk long distances. Sometimes their communities are completely cut off from the schools that they need to attend. In Sierra Leone, for example, in Freetown, the capital city, sometimes the city comes to a halt, a standstill, due to flooding everywhere. People have to stay at home. They cannot go out. We've also experienced natural disasters like landslides and mudslides. In 2017, we had a mudslide in Sierra Leone that killed over 1,000 people in one night. That is how serious the impact is. But beyond that, we also see variations in our weather with increased temperatures. We see our forests dying. We see the depletion of flora and fauna across our communities. We also see a complete degradation of our land, that is in terms of its ability to produce goods and services. All of these impacts, collectively and singularly, result in one thing: poverty. And that is why we cannot divorce poverty from climate education and leadership. We believe that the cure, the key way of addressing poverty, especially in the developing world, is to take climate education and leadership seriously. Then all of those problems will be solved. You will think that with all of these impacts, people will stop and think about doing something about it. But the reality, as Temi has actually said, in my country and most other countries, is that not much is being done in terms of climate education and leadership in order to address these issues. What are then the barriers to climate education and leadership in Sierra Leone? The first key problem we have is that there is no provision for climate education and leadership in our school curriculum. How can we get our children to develop an understanding and agency of climate change in order to be able to address its impacts both now and in the future, if there is no mention of it in the school curriculum? Because it is not in the curriculum, it also implies that our teachers are not capacitated to deal with climate education and leadership issues. The government has other priorities, alleviating poverty and the like, without thinking about climate education. And so there is little sensitization, both at the national, regional, districts, and local levels about climate education and leadership. As if all of these challenges are not enough, we are steeped in tradition and cultures in my country that prevents people from taking concrete action to address climate change. I'll give you an example. when we had the mudslide in Sierra Leone, which killed over 1,000 people, some communities came together and they said they needed to prepare some food for the god that caused the mudslide in order to pacify the gods and prevent a recurrence. So instead of taking corrective action, they decided to cook and waste some more food on a god that does not exist, which is supposed, in order to pacify that god, to prevent a recurrence. You know, we could laugh about it, but to them, it's serious. And it takes a great deal of engagement and awareness raising and education to be able to change that dimension. But at Teach for Sierra Leone, we are doing something about it. We have come together as staff, fellows, alums, and the school communities within which we serve to address all of these issues. What we are doing, we have included climate education and leadership in our residential training institute. So we actually train all of our fellows. As we speak, we have 178 alums and we have 161 fellows. All of them have been engaged and they are involved in climate education and leadership within their various ecosystems. Our fellows have established climate clubs in their schools where they train the kids about waste disposal, about tree planting, and about growing their own food within their school gardens. We have just started those processes, and the results are already positive. That's positively impacting their development. It is also impacting their learning outcomes, and it is motivating them and building their resilience to address climate change. You know, the sad reality is that our children contribute the least to climate change, but they bear the brunt of the consequences of climate change. That is why in both my academic and professional life, I am committed to working with those children for them to develop the right leadership skills to be able to reverse this sad trend in our countries across the world.
I grew up in an area that is one of Kenya's food baskets. My family always did farming. I remember spending almost every Saturday in the garden, planting, weeding, harvesting, and we had good harvests because there was reliable rainfall. We had plenty of food to sustain ourselves and to also sell. This changed in 2008 when Kenya experienced drought. Drought-prone areas were the most affected, but an area like mine that had never experienced drought was also affected. It rained so little that my family and all other families that were depending on farming could not do any farming. Crops died in the field. All of a sudden, food became very little, and it became difficult for my family and for my community to sustain ourselves. I was only 12 years old at the time. The suffering that my family went through and my community went through deeply impacted me. But in school, I never learned why this was happening. I never learned what caused this drought. And more importantly, I never learned what I could do to sustain myself. I was never equipped to handle this crisis. In 2022, I joined this community as a Teach for Kenya fellow. And this impact could be seen in our school. Learners came to school hungry. Others missed school, while others were displaced as they relocated home because it became too expensive for them to sustain themselves in Nairobi. So they moved back to rural homes. The sad thing is, the same knowledge gap that existed almost 15 years ago when I was a primary school student still exists now. Learners are not engaged to know that what is climate change, what are its impacts in our context, and what can we do to equip ourselves. So to address this knowledge gap, together with other educators at the school, we collaborated and we engaged students in climate education conversations, just to build the climate literacy. What is climate change? What are its climate impacts in our context? But we didn't stop there. We engaged them to come up with solutions to the specific climate impacts that affect their daily lives. So for us, the most notable climate impacts was food poverty. So learners came up with a solution for that. They came together and they implemented an innovative gardening project that, first of all, recycles plastic, turning them into hanging gardens, and then planted vegetables in innovative vertical gardens, and also planting vegetables in greenhouses. Learners, as they were doing this project, they discovered their agency. It's not just about the problem, it's about learners discovering what they can do to come up with solutions to allow themselves to be adaptable and to be resilient to climate impacts. As I engaged my learners, I realized that there are certain key practices that make climate education relevant and meaningful for our learners. So the first one is, of course, student agency. The essence of climate education is learners to discover their power in addressing not just climate change, but other impacts. So for us, they came up with innovative gardens. They realized that instead of going hungry, we can plant our own food. We can encourage other learners to do the same at their home. Another important aspect that I realized is very key in climate education is it has to be locally rooted. Learners, you can't engage learners in a problem that does not engage them or affect them in their daily life. It has to make sense to them so that they can be motivated to take action. That is why for us, we addressed food poverty. And another important aspect is that climate education should be a collaborative effort between teachers and students. It's not about me as a teacher or an educator going to the classroom and telling my learners, okay, so we are affected by climate change. This is what we are going to do. No, it's about the teacher being a source of expertise and a facilitator for the learners. Just guide them in the right direction, allow them to research, to discuss, and then to implement strategies and projects collaboratively. It's about learners doing things together and the teachers being co-owners of that process and not the teacher owning the process. I also realized that engaging the community is very key. Like, for example, in the picture that you can see, the first picture, learners started planting vegetables in plastic containers. The community helped us to collect that. And they're the ones who implement the same solutions at home. Because we're in an urban setting, you can't tell them to go and plant on the ground. There's no land. And then in vertical gardens, the community collaborated with us. They gave us seeds. They helped us to, take care of the plants when we are not at school. And the greenhouse that I was talking about, without the community, we wouldn't have that greenhouse in our school. So one of the alumni of our school came to our school and realized that we were doing climate education projects, and she wanted to give back to the community. So she went and got her friends to come together and actually install a greenhouse at the school, so which also complements the school feeding program. We realized that for climate education to be successful, you have to engage the community. And these key practices are so many. And because I don't want to talk about all of them, we captured, together with educators from different contexts, we captured these best practices in a climate education blueprint document. It has 20 best practices that we hope can help you implement or improve the climate education work in your context. We hope that you can use it as a North Star, not just for fellows or educators or organizations in Africa, but throughout our network. As I engaged my learners in climate education, I realized that there are benefits. Climate education makes learning relevant, just like Sibel said. They get to implement the theories in class, it becomes a hands-on experience, and learning becomes a discovery process where they are more motivated to engage and they even want to be in school. So when you go back to your context, to your school, to your organization, to your country, I encourage you to implement, collaborate, and improve the climate education work that is there, because it is desperately needed for our students.
When I joined Teach for Uganda in 2019 as a fellow, out of the 25 learners in my classroom, only 3 could afford to have a miserable meal at school. I have used the word miserable because it's not the meal that they desired. Sometimes they got satisfied. Sometimes it was just a mere bit of swallowing saliva. I mean the meal is so minimal. But one would ask, what about the other 22? They had nothing to eat. And you're all educators here, you know how to teach a learner who hasn't eaten anything. You may be the most awarded teacher. You may use the best devices, laptops. But if you're teaching a hungry learner, you're just wasting your time. The question would be, what's that happens in Uganda that leads us to that? It's something I reflected myself. What had gone wrong? Absurdly, 83% of Ugandan natives depend solely on agriculture for both income and food. But the shaming bit is, they're the very people practicing gross climate crippling activities like charcoal burning, bricklaying, deforestation, and many others. And in the process, the land had lost its fertility. You plant a kilo of maize, you get 3 after 5 months. Are you making sense of your energy? When a child asks for a book, they can't provide. If they can't provide a meal for themselves, what about a book? In the process, very many young people dropped out of school because their families wanted them to stay, offer labor on sugarcane farms to get 1,000 or 2,000 shillings to feed their family. We all understand the power that lies in young people like Sibel and many Sibels in other countries, if they understand the need and the urgency of taking action, of taking the role and discovering the solutions to the problems that arise in their own communities. I started supporting young people, children, provoking this discussion and why it mattered to their day-to-day life. Why were they going to school hungry and why were they keeping in the farms and missing school? It's because all this was around issues connected to climate change. I didn't tell them what to do. We're not speakers of what we want you to do. We are stewards of what we would love you to discover and understand that this is my role to solve this. So they suggested, everywhere is flat, no green, let's plant trees. And my role as an educator was to teach them how to raise a nursery bed. But as I was teaching them, I also knew that there was someone elsewhere who wanted to hear this message. Said, okay, technology has come here. Those who are so passionate about tech, we recorded short videos. If I choose to speak about this, we may not live here. But a lot happened. But the most important thing of this, I'm glad that by the end of that year and the project, we had planted over 150,000 tree seedlings across 85 schools in and also 5 districts in over 83 communities, schools and communities. Luckily, our video made it to Global Videos for Change, and it won 2 global awards. But that's not something I should pat my back for. What is most humbling is this video reached out very many, thousands and millions of young people out there, to ignite them to understand that even if I'm 9 year, 3 year, 7 year, I have a role to play. Ladies and gentlemen, I was not stuck in the fellowship. I graduated. But the question was this going to go with me? Would it stop here? Or I wanted to create another Ivan like myself. I knew that the best way to reach to the peak is to penetrate through the rock and reach the mountain top. I joined Teach for Uganda as a recruitment officer. But my role was recruitment. Yes, the JD, the job description is clear. But inside my heart, there was a burning fire that I want wanted to show the world, to inspire my network to understand that we have a demon at hand and we are the angels to cool down this. So through my recruitment, one of my key, I'm sorry if my CEO is here, this was not part of the job. One of my most fundamental passion was to bring this conversation to the people who are recruiting. Do they understand that even when you are passionate about other things, this matters the most? I mean, there is no education without climate education. You're so passionate about very many things. You want to be doctors, engineers. I mean, how will you even be an engineer when there is drought and the water has dried and you can't produce electricity? You have no career. You think about doing businesses. You have a very great hotel in Mexico, Spain. And when tsunami comes, what you've worked for all your life just runs away in a second. And we still think this doesn't matter? Digital education. What is digital education in a school whose roof has been destroyed by a storm? You may drive the best cars around, but you know when floods come, they don't say, now this one is an engineer, let me cross and go sweep the other one. No, we are all part of the curse. Sorry, I called it the curse. Now, at an organization level, I am proud to say that I was able to inspire my network, launch its first climate education and leadership project, and I've been able to voluntarily train over 750 other educators who are like myself, and produce materials to support children and passionate educators to solve the crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the reason I came here with these other young leaders to create the Pan-African Climate Leaders Network. Not for us, but for me and you, to share more, to discover more, and support our communities. As I conclude this, there is no act of kindness too small to create change. Regardless of where you come from and who you are, you can start right there and change for a better, greener, fresher, and safer environment for generations to come.
I always like this game with my students. Like, it's a song. I think almost everyone is familiar with this song. So they have to understand or know flora and fauna, their names. So we're going to play the game just for 30 seconds, right? You know, it's express anything. Just 30 seconds. Express anything. Just like what? Names of trees. Yeah. Name a tree. Name it. Express anything. Or like what? Names of trees.
What tree?
Robert.
Okay. Thank you. Far too kind. Okay. I'm very sensitive or passionate about the environment. So when I share about conservation, environmental management, becomes a part of me. So I'm going to share a secret with you guys and make sure that it doesn't go beyond the walls, right? I grew up in Mudzi district, a marginalized community in Mutoko, Zimbabwe. I used to walk about 7-8 kilometers to school, and you can imagine a 5-year-old having to walk an unimaginable distance. So sometimes I could dodge into the forest, only to rejoin my friends coming back from school. While in the forest, I could sleep on the ground, on the bare ground, on the soil. I could play with the grass. I could play with the leaves. I could hear the birds singing, the moving wind, the breeze. I developed a natural connection with the environment, like I discovered myself. So it would be like cruel to say that I was alone in the forest. I had the snakes, I had the birds, I had the trees, the wind, and that was a powerful experience. Although I missed lessons, then some 30 years later, I was in Chiredzi, also a district similar to Mutoko, under Teach for Zimbabwe fellowship program. The community, the school, the environment, I could feel the disconnection between the learners and the environment, coupled with the effects or the impacts of climate change. So, motivated by my interest around issues to do with agriculture, conservation, and climate change, I started a club called Learners in the Fight Against Climate Change. So in this club, we equipped the learners, or we tried to build resilience and capacitate them with the right mindset, skills, and tools to be able to navigate the world they are living today and they will inherit tomorrow. So we received a grant. So we acquired a solar PV module that we used for experiential learning, and also that powered our computer lab. We also ran climate awareness campaigns in schools and around community shops. We collected plastic waste. We repurposed or reused them to ornament our flower beds and pathways. And it's always unfair to say climate change is competing with numeracy and literacy. I would say it's complementing numeracy and literacy. If you go to Mwenje Primary School right now, you will see flower beds nicely designed in mathematical shapes, triangles, rectangles. These kids, they loved so much the outdoor activities, and they reconnected with the nature. We also ran a nutritional garden. As you know, food hunger issues in Africa. So the nutritional garden was like a lifesaver. So the kids could now have a decent meal, at least per day. So all these activities, we have realized that we now have environmental stewards. And I'm happy to say that one of my students, Tiso Mbeleji, it's very unfortunate she's not here. She's running a parallel session. So can you clap hands for her? Yes, she wrote powerful articles, poems, speeches about climate change and conservation. That she got a scholarship. She was given a scholarship by African Wildlife Conservation Fund to start up to A level, up to university level. She's now in Form 2. So that was very powerful. I then joined Teach for Zimbabwe as the alumni manager and also climate change lead. And I made them realize that climate change can make powerful partnerships and possibilities for funding. With all this powerful, impactful work, we attracted funding from Malelambwe Trust. UNDP also chipped in. And also in Zimbabwe, we are in the process of signing a memorandum of understanding with the Environmental Management Agency like in Zimbabwe, they are the custodians of the environment. So that we want almost all in schools in Zimbabwe to establish these environmental or conservation clubs. Coupled with that, as part of Teach for Zimbabwe, due to all this powerful work, I was invited in quite a number of powerful global conversations around issues to do with climate change, the role of school in the fight against climate change. I presented in Abu Dhabi during this workshop. It was Train the Trainers workshop. I won also a competition, Teachers Cup competition 2022, and I was invited to present by IPCC side event COP27. And also I was invited by UNESCO and UNFCCC on a webinar on the role of school in social transformation. So what are we saying? Why are we saying all this? Climate education has got the power and potential to transform our communities, to transform our organizations. We are capacitating communities and also leveraging our organizational growth and relevance. So I urge you, all of you, in all your capacities and offices, to embrace climate education with positivity and hope. Thank you.